1 minute. Everybody good? We will. Oh, excuse me. We'll now reconvene the March 5th meeting of the Goochland County Board of Supervisors. We will open with citizen comments. Citizens are reminded that comments should be about items not covered by the public hearings being held later tonight. Comments should be respectful and be no more than 3 minutes in length. Should multiple citizens wish to have a common speaker, they may cede their time in 2-minute increments up to a total allotted time of 10 minutes. And if we get a number of them, you can wait in the front row and for your time to speak. Anybody, would anyone like to come up?
Good evening. My name is Michelle Garman. I live at 4003 Royal Virginia Lane in Haydensville. And I'm here to discuss an issue we've had with hunters in our neighborhood. They're getting a little too close to homes. There are dogs that are on the property, other people's property. And I was looking at the Virginia hunting and trapping regulations. And according to the Virginia regulations, I'm getting all your papers, it says that it shall be unlawful for any person to engage in hunting with a firearm or to discharge a firearm within 100 yards of a dwelling house or occupied building, not his or her own. And my understanding is we don't have an ordinance like that here in Goochland County. And what I would like us to do is to get an ordinance to match the laws that the Virginia hunting and trapping regulations state. Okay. Is there anything I need to do to make that happen?
I'll follow up with you.
Okay.
Any other citizen comments?
I'd just like to follow up on what Michelle said. My name is Mary Ruinestall. I live at 3031 Royal Virginia Parkway. Michelle is my neighbor. She lives, if I look down to the end of my property, her house is on the other side of my woods, and it's about 1/3 of an acre woods, and then her house sits there. We live on a place that used to be Royal Virginia Golf Course. And actually, the day that all this happened, I called the police, the sheriff's office, and I forget the deputy's name, but he was very nice and called me back. And the point is that for about 2 or 3 hours that afternoon, and this was last week, the hunting dogs and the hunters were walking past my house. It used to be the 10th fairway. That fairway is not even 50 yards wide. It's skinny. There's no way there's room in between there. My barn is over here. My horse was going crazy. There's 9 hunters, 2 of them were children, in orange vests and guns. I was corrected, not rifles, shotguns, guns. And they were shooting. There's another house that I can see, and then Michelle lives behind my property. I can't see her house, but I know where it is. Where the 10th fairway goes, when you used to see the green, Michelle's house is here. This is Michelle. The reason we were scared that day is because we heard all this shooting, and we took videos. All you can see on my videos, you can hear the shots. But they were right, what I knew, her house is right here. So we were texting back and forth, and there's another neighbor on this side. And everybody's scared because, you know, these shots have been going on for about 2 weeks, but certain 2 days really bad. And this particular day, there were all these guys out there, and just too much shooting, too close. And the deputy even said, you know, I was afraid to walk my dog on the road. He said, well, they're not allowed to shoot across the road. I'm like, I hope not. But anyway, I just want to back her up on that. And hopefully we can get some kind of a law. The deputy told me there is nothing on the books for Article 78, whatever that. It's distances to shoot a firearm. And we need something that's a law to protect people like us. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other citizen comments? Seeing none, I will now close the floor. We'll now move to public hearings. We have 3 tonight after the removal at staff request of ordinance 5763. And I will turn the mic to Chair McGee to give the explanation of that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. As you may recall, and to make sure that citizens are aware, we made a full presentation before the board last year, I believe in November, about adopting an ordinance which would require an application for nonprofit status for tax exempt status in the county, and that application would have to be renewed every 3 years. The feedback from the citizens who spoke on it, both from nonprofits, a lot of church members who spoke, and from the board at that time, was that might be too heavy a hand of government, and if there is another way to make sure that our nonprofit tax exemptions are being appropriately handled, then that would be more appropriate. And there was a deferral motion to this month. Staff has certainly reconsidered, appreciates all the feedback it received from community members and nonprofits and churches and the work that we did together. But we are tonight withdrawing that ordinance request, and we'll be using other tools at disposal to make sure that things are handled correctly. But so the motion, it's not a motion, on behalf of staff, we're withdrawing the request for the amendment. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So moving on, the first application is for CU 2023-20 by Shelley Swiddick requesting a conditional use permit for a commercial kennel on 21.005 acres. We'll now hear the staff's presentation from Jamie Sherry, followed by the applicant.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I'm Jamie Sherry, Director of Community Development. The first application this evening is by Shelley Swiddick. She is requesting a conditional use permit for a commercial kennel, more specifically indoor dog training. The property is located in the western portion of the county. As you can see on the aerial, it's just south of Broad Street, and it is approximately 1 mile to Old Fredericksburg Road. Looking at the aerial, you can also see that it's a lot of larger lot wooded farmland, as well as some residential. Lake Killarney is a subdivision that's located on the north side of Broad, across the street. The subject property, which is identified in red, is zoned agricultural general, as are all the surrounding properties in the area. A conditional use permit for a commercial dog kennel is required in this zoning district. On the right, you'll see our comprehensive plan map where the property is designated as rural enhancement area, as are all the surrounding properties. This use, if it is approved with a conditional use permit that has appropriate conditions, would be considered consistent with the with the comprehensive plan. So just a little summary about the request. Ms. Whittick has purchased a house last year and intends to build a house as well as build a 6,000 square foot aluminum building to a galvanized aluminum building to have the dog kennel, specifically the fly ball, which is a sport we can tell you a little bit more about. But in addition to the building, there also will be parking on the property, so we have to accommodate for that. There's no outdoor runs or any kind of similar outdoor activities associated with this business, and currently the property is vacant. So this conceptual plan, now identified as conceptual plan A, it differs just a little bit from what went out in the packet. Ms. Whittick had a surveyor or engineering firm do a plat, so that's what's in front of you. In the blue, you can see the location where she will be placing her dwelling. In the red is the 6,000 square foot metal building. It's not depicted on the aerial, on the plan, but the parking area is intended to go in front. At the very bottom, you can see a green dotted line. That is where the access easement is to Broad Street Road, about 400 feet of access easement, so there is a property in front. You will see the building on the right-hand side, and then you can kind of see what it will look like on the indoors. So just a little bit about the building. There will be 3 entrances, and in addition to that, 3 doors, there will be a garage door. There will also be 2 bathrooms, and the floor, as you can see here, is gravelled, but there will be matting placed around the floor. She indicates that's easier cleaning, and it would be safer for the dogs to have the padding. So a little bit about the operations. The applicant has indicated that all of the activities are either pre-scheduled or an appointment is made. She said that they have approximately 50 dogs maximum at their biggest events and 40 people. Some clients may have multiple dogs, that's why they don't add up exactly. She does have 3 different types of events. She has weekly classes where she can have up to 10 dogs. Boot camps, which are monthly, she can have up to 18 people and 18 dogs. And then lastly, once or twice a year, she does have fly ball scrimmages on site, so that would be about once or twice a year. A little bit about the scrimmages, that the dogs essentially are brought into the building through with their owners, and then while they are in the kennels, in the building itself, they are crated. There aren't really any spectators, really, other than family members. There's no seats or benches or booths, and the dogs do not stay overnight. There was a community meeting held back in November. There were 8 attendees. A number of questions included, whether there would be outdoor lighting, how many cars would be coming in and out, hours of operation, the actual setback of the buildings. At the meeting, 2 people did voice support for the application. We did actually, and I think I have this later on, but I don't want to make sure I don't miss it. We did, since the community meeting, we did receive a couple of phone calls, and some folks came in and just had some concerns about, dogs being on the property, maybe getting loose, and, getting on other people's property and harming their pets, as well as there's lots of hunters in the area, and they didn't want that to affect her business. And as I mentioned before, the comprehensive plan with the conditions that are recommended, this would be consistent with the land use designation. So at the January Planning Commission meeting, at the public hearing, the Planning Commission recommended approval with a 5-0 vote. Nobody from the public spoke, and as I mentioned, people did have some comments after the commission meeting. So sorry about the small writing. This is just a quick summary of the conditions. Number one, it does allow for the commercial kennels, specifically to have the dog training facility. The conceptual plan states that they have to develop the property consistent with the conceptual plan. They will be required to have a plan of development and any other county requirements prior to them starting their CUP use. Very similar to other businesses that are approved with the CUP, they are requesting a gravel waiver since they exceed the 10 parking spaces required before you have to pave a lot of the areas in the rural enhancement area to help with the rural environment do request to have a gravel. Approval of this request, of the CUP would allow for that. They need to maintain and construct an access road that's consistent with fire rescue standards. Hours of operation would be limited to 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. 7 and 8 are combined, basically, as I said in the presentation, limiting the dogs to 50 and the people to 49. 49 is consistent with the building occupancy. That's what differs with the 40 versus 49. Outdoor activities, dogs will be unattended outside, meaning, no dog runs. They're not going to just let them out. Any odor from the property must not impede on neighbors, the neighboring properties. There is a required 30-foot screen. The property, as I mentioned, is mostly undeveloped, so it's treed. So existing tree stand can remain and act as a buffer, 30 feet all the way around the property. Of course, they will be able to have access through the access easement, but if it were to be impacted, they would have to replant. And lastly, they're allowed a sign that is 9 square feet at the height of 5 feet. It was kind of quick and kind of concise, but I'd be happy to elaborate or answer any questions. And the applicant is also here who would be able to fill you in on some information.
Thank you, Ms. Sherry. I'll now move to I'll now open the public hearing. Is the applicant?
Yeah, she does. The applicant does have a presentation.
I'm sorry.
Ms. Whittick, if you want to come up, I can start this for you. Oh, geez.
You're good.
Pressure's on.
Do I have to push the button or you push
No, I'm going to get it started, and then you can take over from there. Slideshow.
help with the YouTube last time?
That's okay. We've got our guys here still. So that's forward, that's back, and if you need help with the YouTube, we can help you
Okay,
out.
all right, awesome. All right, thank you guys. I'm Shelly Swiddick, and before we get started, I want to say thank you to my village for coming out. A bunch of my flyball friends, we're a really tight community. So I want to let you guys know a little bit more about my request for my CUP for my flyball training facility. Before I get started, I want to tell you about my family. So since I am building my house, I want to showcase that I have my husband, Matthew, and my 2 children, 5 and 7, William and James. They're very active, great at sports. They're going to be starting at Byrd Elementary in the fall, and they're super excited about all the things that Goochland has. And then I have my 4 dogs here. Can't do this without them. And they have competed in a variety of different dog sports. So why have I picked Goochland? Currently in Danville, Virginia, I service Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, and Tennessee. And moving a little bit further north, my clientele will be able to drive further south, so I'm hoping to get clients from Pennsylvania, West Virginia, Delaware, Maryland, and New Jersey. And then there's a well-established flyball community here in Richmond as well, K9 Kickstart. Personally, I've picked Goochland. I already hit about the public school system and the sports athletic programs for my children. They both have a lot of natural talent, so I want to make sure that I give them the best opportunities. We're going to be building our dream home. We've been renting forever, so this is our opportunity to finally have our home of our dreams. And flyball is a family sport. It's my village. My kids get to compete, so this is an awesome opportunity for me to have my facility grow my kids up in the sport and let them have a ton of opportunities to grow, mature in this environment. There's a lot of opportunities in Goochland with the festivals and outdoor fishing. And I grew up in the country, so now my kids are going to have that opportunity. And we'll also be closer to our friends and my husband's family in Maryland. So a little bit more about my credentials. I've competed and trained for the last 15 years. I've had precision flyball opened efficiently for the last 2 years. I've completed my certified canine strength and conditioning coach through NC State. So that helps with dogs doing fitness because this is a very active sport. We want to make sure they're in as best shape as possible. I've been on ESPN several times, and I have taught students on 6 out of 7 continents. And if Antarctica had it, I would have 7. All right, so I might need help with this YouTube link. Can I point right?
Let me see.
Last time I could point. Okay.
Let's see if I can do it this way for you.
And we'll go quickly through these.
Oh, my Lord. There we
So
go.
this way you can see what I'm talking about.
Gentlemen, am I doing something wrong? Oh,
There you go.
See, that's it. Okay. Does that look familiar? Did I hit something I shouldn't have?
Maybe it's loading.
Uh-oh, we might have to phone a friend.
It's on the internet, right?
Yeah.
Sorry for the delay.
IT
everyone.
to the rescue, hopefully.
Is it this
slide right here?
Yep. Well, that's all right. If it won't work, I can describe it in great detail. So that's totally fine.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. Don't worry about it. All right. So here's the scene. So we've got 4 jumps and 4 jumps on one side, 4 jumps on the other side. And there's a relay race mixed with drag racing for dogs. So it's very high intense. And there's the 4 dogs go down one at a time. They hit a box, catch a tennis ball, and retrieve it back as fast as possible. And then the next dog goes. So they have to do it as fast and cleanly as possible. If they make an error, early pass, drop a ball, they have to rerun. So it's a team sport. So it's not like agility or dock diving where it's individual. This is where you have an entire team and you travel all across the East Coast to compete. So at any event, you could have 150, 200 dogs competing in a weekend. That's not what this facility is doing. We are not hosting tournaments, but we need to train those dogs. In order to get them on the caliber to compete at flyball, you have to start from the basics. So that's what I do, and that's what this video would have shown. So this would be more of a dog doing stuff on the flat, one-on-one with me, working one with another dog. So teaching them all the little basic mechanics in order to get to that level of competition. So what does it take to be a flyball dog? So these dogs are more than just a pet. For us, they're literally our partner. We often refer to flyball as a career. It's their career, it's their job. So to have this job, they need a lot of impulse control. In the video, you would have seen there were 8 dogs total off leash at the same time. And these dogs are running down 90 feet and 90 feet back. So 180 total. So these dogs have to be reliable in order to recall back to you. They have to be focused, and they cannot be aggressive in any way because they have to work with other dogs and other people. They need to be engaged. They have to love the sport. You can't make a dog do flyball because as soon as you let them go, they can be like, no, I don't want to do it. But because they love the sport and we train them basically from puppyhood, they love it. And then I'd also like to mention that they tend to be on the small to medium size. Majority of flyball dogs are not large or extra large because you can see in this picture, the box is 24 to 28 inches wide. So larger breed dogs would have a harder time executing the sport safely. All right. So we talked a little bit about the services that I offered, so I'll go through these quickly. Weekly classes, monthly boot camps, the private one-on-ones. I do train online using multiple different platforms. We have the scrimmage tournaments, which are the largest events, but they're only 1 to 2 times a year. And then I do travel. So last year I went to Idaho, Colorado, California, Tennessee, and this year I'm headed to Alaska. So my current facility is a very long building. As I mentioned, the dogs have to run down 90 feet and come back. And then it is matted. So you'll kind of see the different strips of matting running down. So the future facility, this is just a little mock-up. The 2 bathrooms, indoor crating, and HVAC, which I'm super excited about because right now I don't have it. It will be 12 feet tall, crushed gravel flooring. I will be adding closed cell spray foam to both the sides and the ceiling, not only for climate control, but for noise control as well. And then here is a terrain view of where the facility will be located. The blue icon is Precision Flyball, and the purple icon will be my residence. So I will be the one closest to my facility. And my husband works from home, and obviously, in addition to Precision, I'm at home with my children. All right, so rules for flyball dogs. So cleaning up, making sure that there's designated potty areas and that you use poop bags. You pick it up, put it in the trash can. Dogs rest. This is an active sport. We need them to work at their peak performance. So when it's not your turn working, you are in a crate resting. And especially at classes, you pitch in for everyone else. So you rotate through, you help with your dog, and then you put your dog away, and then you help with everybody else's dog. So there's no outdoor facility, there's no dogs outside barking, off leash, because number 3, you have to stay on leash at all time with your owner. And then number 4, appointment only. So there shouldn't be anyone on the facility without my advance notice. All right. And I'd like to welcome everyone to come visit it. You know, if we're approved tonight and once construction starts, you're welcome to come check it out. It's going to be amazing. And I wanted to see if there's any questions that you guys had.
So my initial question was going to be, when I saw the emails and everything rolling in, was why you chose Goochland, but you addressed that, and I'm very happy about that. But where's the closest competition facility? Like why?
For flyball specifically?
Right.
The nearest closest facility that would teach flyball.
Well, no, not that would teach, but like, where would your dogs go to compete?
Oh, to compete. Oh,
Like the closest. You're
yeah.
right.
Well, I'm hoping eventually in Richmond, if One Level Up is open, they'll host there. But we currently travel to Blacksburg, Virginia, Franklin, Virginia, Climax, North Carolina, Raleigh, North Carolina. There's several up in the northern region, up Maryland, Pennsylvania, Jersey. But those are typically where we go. We usually compete about once a month.
Okay. And then the other question I had was, how long is a training session?
So weekly classes are typically 2 to 2.5 hours.
Okay.
A boot camp is an all day, that's usually 9 to 4.
Okay.
One-on-one privates can range from 30 to 90 minutes. And then a scrimmage is usually 4 hours. I think that's most of them.
Okay.
Yep.
That's all I've got.
Good questions.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the board? Thank you. Ms.
All right,
Smith.
thank you.
So I'll now open the public hearing. Comments should be respectful and no more than 3 minutes in length. And just like any other time, if multiple citizens want to have a common speaker, they may cede their time in 2-minute increments up to a total of 10 minutes. Anyone?
Good evening. My name is Erin McNeil, and I am a lawyer in the city of Richmond with the Office of the Attorney General. And I had the privilege of training with Shelley just this past weekend at Level Up Dog Sports. And my dogs never competed in flyball. I only had the chance to train with Shelley and some of the other parts of her flyball community that are sitting behind her. And just the chance to train in this sport with my dogs was a chance to be part of this community And there were so many people that came with their teenagers that got their teenagers excited to play games with the family dog and their parents. And they grew up in the sport just like I hope Shelly's sons will. And the chance to make these connections, it's been a decade since I trained with some of these folks that I see sitting here in this room. And we're still friends, and we still meet up whenever we can. And even though I don't play fly ball, the chance to learn some of the skills that Shelly presented about enhanced my dog's life and my life, not just as a dog owner, but also as a member of the community. I also sent an email to the board. I hope you had a chance to review it. But the rising tide does lift all ships. And there is Paws to Swim dog swimming facility just in Rockville. And so that is a great place to condition your sport dogs. There's food locations nearby this proposed location where people are going to be picking up hot dogs and chicken fingers and sandwiches as they're on their way to and from lessons. And so having a family-friendly facility that encourages community, I think, is so important in a place like Goochland, and it does bring a community together, and those folks will be patronizing the other businesses in the area, which I think is a boon to everyone, even if you don't play fly ball. Thank you.
Ms. McNeil, Ms. McNeil, I'm sorry, could you offer your address? I didn't think you gave it.
I'm sorry. I live in Hanover County at 6429 Chestnut Church Road in Mechanicsville, but that does show a facility in Goochland. I would come. It's not that far for us. We travel all around for these events and for training opportunities, and I would absolutely travel to Shelly's facility in Goochland to train my dogs. It's not far for somebody that wants a specialized facility like this one. Thank you.
Good evening to everyone. My name is Linda Samuel. I live at 15630 Riverbend Trail in Lenexa, Virginia. It is a singular pleasure for me to speak in support of Ms. Shelley this evening. Although she is applying for a kennel license, her primary work is not boarding and kenneling. Her primary objective is, of course, to run a training facility. I've been involved with the canine sport of fly ball for approximately 14 years. I'm currently in the process of training a dog now, and I can say without hesitation or reservation that Ms. Shelley is the best trainer that I have ever worked with. She possesses a deep, intuitive understanding of the canine mind and the physical attributes associated with developing a canine athlete. Her primary focus is to teach sport-specific skills associated with fly ball. In recognizing her skills and talents as a trainer, it is equally important to recognize what she is not. She is not an animal behaviorist. Her work does not focus on problematic behaviors in dogs, such as aggression, anxiety, and fear, which are typically rooted in physiological and psychological issues. Typically, those of us who employ Ms. Shelley are not novice handlers. We have many years of experience. When it's time to seek sport-specific assistance from Shelley, our dogs already possess foundational skills such as basic manners and obedience. When transitioning from our cars to the training building, our dogs are always on leash. They are eager to get inside because the training is fun and exciting both for them and for us. You need not worry that this endeavor will create a public nuisance. Shelley has operated this very business within the city limits of the city of Danville, Virginia, for several years without incident, complaint, or police call for service. By the way, we humans are pretty tame as well. We're not a bunch of rabble-rousers there to party and carouse and play loud music. In seeking to relocate to Central Virginia, there were other counties in the Richmond metropolitan area that the Swidicks might have chosen to meet their needs, including Hanover, Powhatan, Amelia, and Louisa, to name a few. The Swidicks, Matt and Shelley, and their sons are a young family. They adhere to family values and understand the importance of hard work and diligence in building a life together. They have chosen Goochland for the quality of life that it can provide: good schools, low crime rates, emergency services, places of worship, nearby shopping, and cultural opportunities. I hope you will join me in welcoming this fine young family to Goochland County and to Central Virginia by voting in favor of their application. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Rebecca Browning Herrera. I have lived in Goochland for almost 30 years. My residence is 4050 Whitney Drive, and this facility is going to back up right behind my property. A few years ago, they cut down all the trees, so you could imagine my concern when I saw the trees being cut down. I was told at that time that they were going to replant pine trees, so I was very happy about that. And since with the facility coming in, I was a little concerned, number one, the noise, number two, traffic, and number three, because the trees have already been cut down, there's no boundaries, and I've had probably about 8 trees fall onto my property since they cut those original trees down. I've since talked to Shelley, and I was going to say Miss, but I'm older than her, so I'm not calling her Miss. I'll call her Shelley. I've spoken with her, and she has answered some of my concerns. I guess now it's just that with the property being so close, 50 yards of my property, because the reason I moved out to Goochland was because I am in law enforcement, and to get away from the city, come to Goochland, peace and quiet, and my kids could go to a school system that I was proud to say that they attended. Which one are, at this point, to go a little bit into my family, I have a daughter that attended Goochland County who currently is an attorney. She went to Howard University, and she's a practicing attorney. My youngest daughter is at UVA, and she's in medical health, public health, and she's pursuing her master's degree right now. And then I have another daughter who's in childcare teaching. So I say that to say Goochland school system has really helped my family. I want to retire in place in Goochland, so I would like to stay at my residence until I have no longer time. So I'm just hoping that this is going to work out for everyone, and I can retire in my home. Thank you.
Any more citizen comments?
Good evening. My name is Teresa Pownell. I live at 4295 Steeker Creek Drive in Powhatan. And I just want to address, I am part of Shelley's Village. I've known Shelley for a very long time. As a young person, Shelley has honed her skills in business through her degree at Virginia Tech, her work at a big accounting firm, and then she took the leap and has owned and operated Precision Flyball in Danville for a couple of years. She did train my youngest dog from very beginning to today, and because of her commitment to us, he is exceptional, a 3-year-old dog. But the people, as many people have alluded to, and Shelley's neighbor, we're a really respectful lot, and especially in Danville, there's a business like right underneath Shelley's business, and there's never been a quabble. We all know that dogs bark, so we're quick and efficient to maintain. We want to keep doing what we're doing where we're doing it. And so with that, I ask for your support for Shelley's application. Thank you.
Thank you. Any more citizen comments? Okay. If not, I will close the hearing. Does the applicant wish to respond to anything that was stated? Okay. Board, any comments, discussion?
Well, I was confused by her neighbor. Were you in support, ma'am, or were you in opposition?
Neither. I just want want to see how, I wanted to make my point known that I wanted the area to stay as it was with the peace and the quiet. I don't want to hear dogs barking. I don't want dogs in my property and traffic. So, at this point, I'm not opposing it, but I'm hoping we can all work together.
Yeah, I guess, can I stand up and say one thing, or just talk?
Thank you. Any other discussion? Okay. Do I have a motion?
Yeah, I'd motion to approve.
Okay. Do I have a second?
I have an enthusiastic second.
Any additional discussion?
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, I see our fire marshal in the back. The only thing I was curious about, I'm guessing everybody's on the same page, but the 49 people maximum for a 6,000 square foot building just surprised me a little bit. So I was wondering if we could talk to that a little bit.
Yeah, I think this probably came from the building official, and it has to do with, actually, Mr. Davies might actually be able to respond to this, because I think it does have to do with fire suppression.
Okay. The reason I'm asking is because I've heard it's a family sport. I got 49 dogs and you count 50 people. It's one per car,
I will try and assist you.
Okay, thank you, sir. Again,
Yes.
second time in a couple weeks.
You're inquiring as to
So
the occupancy
the
load?
reason the occupancy was, the conditional use says that it'll be limited to 49 people. It says because of the building size. But it's a 6,000 square foot building, and it just seemed like a large building for such a small occupancy rate.
The building official usually figures occupancy load, but it's based on a formula on how many square feet for each person that's standing, how many square feet for each person that's seated, and if there's tables involved, the square footage increases for each one of those.
Okay.
So let's say like a standing person is 7 square feet, but a table would be 15 square feet if you're seated. If you're seated, it's like 10 or 12 square feet. I don't recall the table off the top of my head completely, but the building official usually figures that out. And I think the size of the building and whether or not fire protection is required affects all of that.
Okay. But we're pretty sure this is in line with the code. Sure.
Yes,
As far as I know, yes, sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
yes, Mr. Spinhour, this did come from the building official.
Great. Okay, thanks. That's all, Mr. Chair.
No other comments? Okay. Mr. Carpenter, roll call vote, please.
Mr. Christie?
Aye.
Mr. Winfrey?
Aye.
Mr. Spoonhour?
Yes.
Mr. Lyle?
Yes.
Mr. Waters?
Yes. Okay, thank you. We'll now move on to application CU 2024-1, application by River Run Manor for a renewal of its conditional use permit 2019-11. We'll hear from the staff, followed by the applicant, if they so desire. Oh, I'm sorry.
I was hoping she was going to bring dogs, but
Ms. Sherry?
thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the record, I'm Jamie Sherry, Director of Community Development. The next public hearing is an application by River Run Manor LLC. This is a request for a renewal of a conditional use permit for a place of public assembly. The property is located, as you can see on the left map on the left-hand side, just east of the Courthouse Village, and on the right-hand side, you see the aerial. So it is located south of River Road West. The area is surrounded by, again, large lot subdivisions as well as farmland and the James River to the south. River Cliff is located directly to the west of the property. The zoning for this property is agricultural limited, as are the surrounding properties in the area. A place of public assembly is allowed in this zoning district with a conditional use permit, which is the reason for the application. The the comprehensive plan does designate this area as rural enhancement area, as is the area surrounding, similar to the other application I presented. If the conditions are consistent with the application for the area, this use would be consistent with the conditional use permit. With the comprehensive plan. So just a little history about this site. In 2019, a conditional use permit was approved for a place of public assembly. This is a previous residence where the applicant has purchased the property and has renovated, has done a pretty substantial renovation to the property. Lower levels have, grand ballrooms and, they host weddings. It really is quite a grand venue. The applicants actually do live on the property. And here are some pictures from their website that kind of depict what I was just sort of alluding to. The center pictures, the top one is the front of the manor. The back, directly below that is the rear portion of the manor, and you can see there's like a vestibule of sorts that are located right there. That's that. Right here is the interior marble foyer, a grand staircase, and then there's also a pool house on the property, which is in the upper left-hand corner. So here is the site, an aerial of the site. So you have River Road West would be all the way towards the top. So you have an accessing the property just directly from River Road West. So you have the parking area, as with all of our place of public assemblies, there is a requirement for overflow parking. This is like a driveway that leads up to the manor. Then we have the pool house and the pool, as well as tennis courts are located right there. Oh, just a little bit about the house. The house is 22,000 square feet. The pool house is 1,000 square feet, and the parking area does have area of gravel parking for 75 spaces. So this is Exhibit A. This is actually the approved POD for the site. So you'll see once again, the access from River Road West, the 75 parking spaces, the overflow parking, the manor, and the pool house and tennis courts. The applicant is not proposing any physical changes to the property. So here we have kind of just a little locator as to what is close by. I mentioned River Road West is toward the top. What's important here is the location to the residential buildings that are right here. Both of them are between 700 and 730 feet from the actual venue. So the applicant is requesting a renewal, but they are also requesting several changes to their application when, in 2019, when they did come to the county and was granted their approval of their conditional use permit. It was pretty heavily regulated, so they're asking for some loosening up of some of those requirements. The applicant and the CUP uses have not had any zoning violations since it was issued. That should be noted. So what I have here is a list of what they requested, what they requested, and what the Planning Commission is recommending. So number one, limit on guests. The 2019 application had a maximum of 299 guests. That was a limitation that was placed because that was the building official also set an occupancy on the house itself. So what they are requesting is 299 guests that could be allowed within the manor, but overall a maximum of 500 at any event. And this was recommended for approval by the Planning Commission. The event limit, back in 2019, they were approved for 40 events per year, and they are requesting to have one per day. This is something that the Planning Commission did recommend approval. Number three, hours for the event. They did request one change, and this was just to have their hours extended on Friday and Saturday night on the interior of their manor to go to midnight instead of midnight. instead of 11 p.m., and that was recommended approval by the Planning Commission. Amplified sound, they wanted some relief from that, so they were limited to 6 times per year outdoors, and they were requesting to have no limits, and that was recommended by the Planning Commission. Keep in mind, when we say outdoors, it includes them being within some sort of tent or on a porch that has some sort of covering as well. And that was recommended for approval by the Planning Commission. Number 5, the applicant is requesting to do fireworks on the property. The applicant, the Planning Commission did not make the recommendation for approval on this. And the applicant is requesting, instead of a 10-year renewal, which is what we typically do for a renewal, 10-year expiration for a renewal, they are requesting 15 years. The Planning Commission recommended 10 years. So just a little bit about fireworks. I'd kind of gone through the other listing of things that they did approve. What they did not approve was fireworks. So just a little bit about that. The fire marshal visited the venue and identified one location where they can conduct fireworks. And you can see on the aerial up there, the circle, that's approximately 160 feet in diameter. And what that means is that indicates the fallout site where, fireworks go up. That's the potential where they would come down. And there was also associated that with that 160 diameter is where the recommended shell size from the fire marshal came, approximately 1.6. The applicant will probably tell you there is no 1.6, so 1.5 is probably what they would be going with. And as I mentioned, I showed you the 2 site plans. This area is their overflow parking area, so it would impact that. So if this were to be approved, they would have to demonstrate where people would be parking, and that area would have to be marked off secure. So we don't know what the potential impact is of all of the public places of assembly. None of them have been issued approval for fireworks. So I just wanted to make it known to you, if this were to be approved, if we were to get complaints and they were operating within their CUP rights, we would have no recourse. They would be legally allowed to do it. And I also wanted to note that the noise ordinance would not apply. In the event that the Planning Commission, that the board were to approve this, we did have some language that was identified, and it did go out in the staff report. I did have a request from the applicant, and what went out in the staff report was a 9 p.m. ending time. They requested 10 because, oftentimes in the summer, it's not really dark until 9 o'clock. But just real quick, if you were to approve it, the recommendation would be a maximum of 15 events for fireworks annually, that the display would only be 5 minutes long, and that's time built in based on the applicant's request to kind of have a little fumble. They said most are shorter than that. I mentioned the 10 p.m. Prior to a fireworks event, a minimum of 2 weeks, the applicant will be notifying the adjacent property owners, and they must get a permit from the fire marshal, and he's here, also can answer any questions for you. There is a permitting process that they would have to go through. And again, I mentioned the shell size of 1.62 inches. That's based on that fallout zone. And any alternative parking they would have to provide, they need to show us where that's going to be before the event. So there was a community meeting held back in December. Approximately 8 people did attend. There were questions about the number of events, outdoor activities, granting actually another 5-year approval since there were so many changes instead of going to 10 years. Enforcement of how we enforce our conditions, noise, and the potential for fireworks. Few attendees did express support, but there were some questions and concerns about, again, noise for the fireworks and the granting of the 10-year approval. Since the community meeting, staff has received 2 phone calls, concerns about potential noise. And as I mentioned before, this activity, the CUP activity has not generated any complaints since it was issued back in 2009. Comprehensive plan, if the conditions approved with this CUP mitigate surrounding area problems, it is consistent with the comprehensive plan. So back in January, this was heard by the Planning Commission, and it was recommended approval with the changes that I went through during the presentation with a 5-0 vote. No one from the public spoke, and I mentioned that already about the 2 people contacting us. So this is a chart. What it shows are, in the first column, it's various items that are associated with each of these conditional use permits. River Road 2019, 2024, what they're requesting from us now. And also has Dover Hall, Bandit Ridge, Running Mare, and Adams School, just in case you wanted to compare some of the some of the things that were approved with each one of those. As I mentioned, everything that the applicant is requesting with the exception of the fireworks, which as you can see, there have been none issued with a conditional use permit permitting, as well as the 10 versus 15-year renewal. So I'll have this to pull up if you have any questions. So I'm going to go through the conditions rather quickly. I'm going to highlight some of the areas that have been changed. These are black-lined from the 2019 approval. A lot of it is just, we've updated our standard conditions. Some of it is just that the changes are in underlined. So the use to allow a public place of assembly is number one. The site plan, so currently they have an approved POD that allows them to have up to 299 people. So that's the 75 spaces and the overflow and, the access and things along those lines. Once they are to exceed, before they exceed that 299, they will need to have another approved POD. So this gives opportunities for, the reviewing staff, including fire rescue, to ensure that there are enough parking spaces, there's safe walking paths, all those types of things, that those are all to be constructed prior to the CUP activity over 299. So there was a little bit of wordsmithing with that last one in conceptual plan. We actually have a plan of development that is referenced. Parking, 75 spaces are required under the current circumstances. If they increase their attendees, then they would have to revise the parking on the POD. As in the other case, I mentioned that the parking that is in existence here is gravel, so they would again be asking for gravel to be approved for any new parking. Internal access, they would basically have to have a safe way to get to all the CUP activity places for fire rescue, and this would be approved by both fire rescue and my department. They would be allowed to have a sign, 32 square feet. They do already have a sign. We have added that 10 feet, and it shall not be illuminated. That's the code requirements. Any new lighting, permanent or temporary lighting would have to, a lighting plan would have to be submitted. Again, the building occupancy is limited by the building official at 299. Limit on guests, this is in yellow because this was a substantial change from 299 to 500. And then event frequencies. Events with fewer than 80, there's a limit of 1 per day. Events with over 80, they will be allowed 3 times a week, but no more than 150 in a calendar year. And this next 11 shows the change from indoor hours to exceed from 11 p.m. to midnight. And the holidays, they will not be active are Christmas Eve, Christmas, or Easter. This is the amplified sound, and again, they were limited on doing that, so they are allowed to have amplified sounds unlimited, but again, within some sort of tent structure, so it's not like just in the yard. Outdoor amplification still must be ended by 10 p.m., and devices shall face the river. And over 100 guests, they should have uniform security. Any alcohol consumption must be consistent with the ABC regulations. And then the way the conditions read currently, they are still prohibited to have fireworks. They can have their personal fireworks, as it says, during any CUP activity, but not for the event venue. Firearms, no firearms. They need to contact my department annually with a list of events, and then they update them. They have been doing this, and they update them regularly as they're scheduled. This does show the 10-year expiration date. They are requesting 15. And then lastly, the transfer or lease, which states that if they were to sell or lease the property, they would have to notify them of the conditions, and we would also have to be notified as a county. That concludes my presentation. I can answer any of your questions. I'd be happy to, and the applicant has a presentation and is here as well.
Any questions from the board before we let the applicant speak? Yes, Mr. Rogers.
I noticed the restrictions on Christmas Eve and New Year's. I have some Jewish friends who might want to get married on December 25th. Who came up with those 2 days?
That was done before my time. I'm not sure. I'm assuming that this was a discussion that either came as a result of, the applicant offering it, or maybe responding to some of the concerns that people have. That's actually kind of a standard that we have for activities that are, potentially could disrupt with some noise or something. If an activity, lots of people, that is one of our standard conditions. I wouldn't say standard, common conditions, perhaps that's a better way of putting it.
Okay, just, so before your time, okay.
Yeah, we just rolled it forward. They did not, through the renewal process, they did not ask for that to be waived.
Any other questions from the board?
Okay.
Thank you, Chair.
Let me go ahead.
If y'all want to waive it, it's totally fine. I'm not going to work on Easter, but somebody might want to get married there.
Let's see, River Run. There we go, and forward, back.
All right, hello guys. I'm Kim Moody. This is my husband Andrew Moody. We're 2421 River Road West, Maidens, Virginia. Thank you all for your time. We will try to go through this as quickly as possible. You all have been so patient. So here's the property in use on the slideshow at an event with an outdoor cocktail hour, which is pretty common use for those two exterior spaces on the left. Next photo is our smallest ballroom we call the Cameo, with just a nice grazing table set up for a cocktail hour. The next image is one of our ballrooms, the Wedgwood, which is often used for dancing. And then the one to the right is another ballroom that has about a 200-person dining capacity that is also sometimes used for dancing as well. A little bit about us. So we've been in the wedding industry, for better or for worse, for about 20 years, about 1,400 weddings under our belt, self-employed since 2004, which is wild. And Andrew is background in accounting, bookkeeping, property management, real estate. So we've been a good pair, along with the Adams, who are longtime residents of Goochland County, probably best known for their properties on the 250 Broad Street Road and the development and restoration of those, and the ownership of the Adams International School, where Tamara faithfully serves as an educator to both of our children here who are being robbed in the back with iPads. I'll probably get fussed at that by Tamara tomorrow, but anyway, we just are so appreciative of the last 5 years in Goochland. Coming into Goochland as residents of Nottoway County was a little bit unnerving, I would say. We came from a rural agricultural area, and our families are very connected in the community. And going through this process and not knowing any faces was really something during that time. So we appreciate the warm welcome Goochland has given us since then and since the transition. Just a little bit at River Run, the clientele average budget is about $80,000 to $120,000, so about double or triple the average Richmond area wedding industry per event. So just this week, we've had clients who flew in from New York and California, booked with the property or in the process of booking with the property, one professional football player. We've hosted, I think, 4 professional athletes events so far, none of which were Virginia natives. They have found the property online, come to the Richmond airport, and stayed in Goochland for the weekend. So I think the type of tourism that we bring in is the good part. We don't do a lot of, we're not putting pressure on a lot of the services, the school system, that kind of thing, but we're breathing a lot of money into the county. Filling a lot of the local hotels. If Goochland had more than one hotel, we could probably keep that one pretty busy too, but I think the Residence Inn has a good number of room blocks, from us pretty consistently. River Run, just in the last 5 years, over 200 5-star reviews, dozens and dozens of awards, no complaints from the neighbors. We've invested quite a bit as a partnership, bringing the internet 7 miles from Crozier underground, putting the fiber in the ground. Unfortunately, that all happened in pre-COVID times, and so yeah, that's a separate side conversation, I think. But a lot of our clients that visit are coming into Goochland for the weekend, spending a lot of money here. So we wanted to just touch on the fireworks thing, since we knew that would be a little bit of the point of contention. We've talked with a lot of the neighbors about it in depth. We have put some concessions on ourselves to be respectful neighbors. We have an elderly little dog, and we understand the concerns for both livestock. We're both of our fathers own a lot of livestock. So the farm community and the sensitivity to that, we certainly understand. So we've implemented or put in place some of these concessions on ourselves to try to make things a little bit easier for the neighbors to be, just for us to be good neighbors.
Thank you for having us, and just wanted to briefly go over this slide. Jamie covered most of these with the meeting with the fire marshal to go over a safe launch location, the length of shows, the shell size, which we're limited to by the launch site, and of course we want to notify the neighbors prior to any fireworks if that is granted, to be good neighbors. And of course, we would limit the amount of shows per year to 15. That was covered by Jamie in her presentation. This is just a sample, and it's spaced out a little weird on the screen, but we put together like a rules and regulations, and we'll be adding to that. But this is what the clients would see. If it were allowed, then we would have all of the restrictions that the clients would have to follow all laid out on a rules and regulations form. We'd have an addendum that they would have to sign. And that's everything on this we covered earlier, so it's nothing new. The viewing area is listed on there, and the licensed pyrotechnic provider, they'd have to work with the one that we recommend. And he's actually here if you have any fireworks questions. But and we mentioned this at the Planning Commission meeting, but just so if there's any questions regarding the type of fireworks that we are proposing, the 1.3G fireworks are what you would see in like a July 4th celebration. It has more flash powder, and it goes higher in the air, and of course it's larger shells. The ones that we are proposing are considered consumer professional grade. So they do not go as high, the shells are smaller, and the decibel level is not as loud for them. And this is another side that compares the decibel levels of those size fireworks to other loud noises. And as you can see, leaf blower is right below that, And I know, we're running the leaf blowers every Thursday on wedding week, so that probably gets annoying to some of the neighbors, and this would be very similar to that, will only be a short. I know, train horn is actually, I think, higher than that as well, and we hear that how many times a day in the middle of the night, but anyways, that's just a comparison that the decibel level to alleviate any noise concerns. And then I think Jamie showed it in her slide, and it's still approximate. This one doesn't actually even show the current parking lot, but we do understand that parking considerations would need to be made. And I went out with a measuring tape today, and with our current parking lot, it would affect 7 parking spots. So not a ton. We're able to, we have some plans with the overflow parking that we've discussed with Jamie, and with our POD, updated POD, we can make a notation of where the additional parking would be. And we do have it as a requirement in our contract with our clients that if they have over a certain amount of guests, we require them to use transportation to transport themselves in from hotels, usually the Residence Inn or other hotels in the area. So that parking usually is never fully utilized because of that requirement that we put on them. So that would be adjusted based on if they were to request fireworks, we would say you're going to lose 7 spots, so the requirement of parking spaces would be lowered as well. I think that's all I had as far as my
If y'all have
presentation.
any questions, we're happy to answer them, but.
Board members? Okay, thank you very much. I'll now open the public hearing. Comments should be respectful and no more than 3 minutes in length, and same goes with being able to cede time in 2-minute increments up to a maximum of 10.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Gil Crittenden, and my wife and I, Lona, who's sitting in the back, we've been licensed vendors in the hospitality business for 20-plus years. And sadly, 3 years ago, we left the area, of which I'm still paying that price when we come out here. My wife loves it immensely. But Kim and Andrew, we're charter vendors with them. We work probably 30 venues in Central Virginia, and they are hands down the most thoughtful, caring people about the community. And again, we had a home right in Mannequin Sabbath and appreciate the quiet, and that's what people largely come out here for. And that's probably the overarching message that they send to everybody who comes out there and works with them. Just wanted to share that with you.
Could we get your address?
I'm at 800 Arlington Circle in Henrico County now, but we were in Mannequin Sabbath for 20 years.
Thank you very much.
Okay?
Hi there, I'm Mason Shackles, the sales manager at the Residence Inn Short Pump at the Notch.
And your address, sir?
My address is 3516 Grove Avenue. And I just wanted to say, first and foremost, they are absolutely excellent to work with. We have never had an unsatisfied guest with the event and experience that they have at that venue. A lot of times, actually, we even have family members or friends actually, see what they've done or attend the wedding, and then they want to come and stay at our hotel in order to have their weddings there. In addition to that, with guests staying at our hotel, one thing we really like to do is send them into Goochland. Anytime, they have free time, not everyone's always part of the wedding. We try and show them the great spots to eat nearby, or little, antique shops, stuff like that. Just really trying to get a little bit more experience with Goochland. One thing I wanted to mention, there have been over 1,000 room nights in 2023 just from their wedding group blocks at our hotel. And that totals to a little over $125,000 in revenue. And that being said, the guests have always had an absolutely wonderful experience, and what better way to, show how great Goochland can be by having such a happy celebration and have everyone have such a great time while they're here. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Seth DeCanner. I was once a Goochland resident at 21 Hunting Ridge Road for about 22 years, but my better half had us move to Glen Allen. We now live at 10830 Morning Creek Drive. I also run one of the largest catering companies in the Central Virginia area, and I'm very proud to be a partner with the Estates at River Run. We are on their exclusive vendor list, which is unique because they only work with an exclusive vendor list, which means they're bringing out folks that know what they're doing. And I can speak on behalf of many other vendors in the local area. My team members live in the Goochland area, many of them. Many of the vendors we work with at the State of River Run are from this area. And they are a top-notch run organization. I did just under 1,100 large catered events in 2023. They were my largest venue by far. They are one of the few venues where the ownership live on property and are there available at all times of the event. If my captains have a question at 11 o'clock at night, if it's not Andrew and Kim, it's one of their other associates that are available. They're there, they're watching, they're paying attention to what's going on at their venue, and they're accountable. I can tell you from my team's perspective, it's one of our favorite places to work. It's really been a joy, and it's really a pleasure to have. I'm fortunate to be at some of the most gorgeous properties around the Central Virginia area, and I go all the way out to Virginia Beach, Lynchburg, Charlottesville, Petersburg. You have a gem in your backyard, and we're sharing it with a lot of the world that is coming from California and other areas, a lot of Washington, D.C., and so on. And it's a gem, and it's really nice that we're able to share it with a lot of people that want to come have their special day or experience there. So we're proud to be partners, and we look forward to doing a lot more with them in the future. Thank you.
Linda Moore, 2164 Prophet Road, Mannequin-Sabot. I think they're wonderful for that. My only concern is the fireworks, okay? I don't think that that is a good thing to have in place. From a standpoint of animals and getting crazy with fireworks, and it's not like the leaf blower that's during the day. This is at 10 o'clock at night, when a lot of us folks, to be honest with you, old fuddy-duddies like me are in bed because we have things to do, and we're just not acute to that. This is farmland. This is agricultural thing, and when we think about fireworks, you know, I don't think about it being out there in the rural environment. And yes, they are wonderful for what they do, but I just think fireworks is a little bit over the edge. And I approve everything but the fireworks is great. Thanks.
Good evening. My name is Dr. Terry Whipple. I live at 12883 River Road in the east end of Goochland. But I also own the property that's immediately across the street from River Run Manor, about 50 acres there. I really compliment what Mr. and Ms. Moody have done with this previous Massey mansion. They've done everything first class. It's a magnificent facility with magnificent venues. I really rise only for a point of clarification. If I understood correctly, currently they're permitted 40 activities per year and are requesting 320 increase, which is an 800% increase. And I'd just like to hear a little bit more about whether or not the demand really justifies an 800% increase. My experience as a surgeon has always been to measure twice and cut once, right? So I wonder if that increase might be staged a little bit over year-by-year intervals. Thanks very much.
Any additional citizen comments?
Good evening. I am Brandon Frazier from Signature Sparks. I am their fireworks vendor, so I'm going to shed a little light.
Could you give your address, please?
My address, 8610 Parkland Terrace, Toano, Virginia. Yes, I'm an hour and 15 minutes away, so I'm here because this makes sense to me, or I wouldn't have driven here. This is my second time here. Fireworks that most people are used to is what you see on television for 4th of July, or what you've seen at Disney, or what you've seen as the big yards. This is not it. What I'll be using are close proximity fireworks or article fireworks. All of the report burns up in the air. There's nothing falling to the ground. Instead of yards, it's only feet. We have a very small window that me and Marshall Davies went over. We have a very small window to launch from. So safety is always paramount with me and my company. I wouldn't do this if I didn't think I could safely do this. As far as decibel levels as animals, I am an animal lover myself. I have 6 animals and 2 elderly dogs. Matter of fact, one who has to go to emergency vet tomorrow morning. So when it comes down to animals, I'm going to protect them first and foremost. Now, yes, after 10 o'clock, I understand, but we're going to try to end all shows so there's nothing going past 10 o'clock. Second of all, the train that runs behind them, you cannot predict that. So that engine blowing is 180 decibels, and they don't just blow that horn once. Second of all, my fireworks probably top off the ones that I'll be using because they're very small. They're 0.8 of an inch to 1.2 inches. They're called article fireworks. Like I said, they're special use fireworks for a venue this size. I had to do research to make sure that I found fireworks that would fit this window. After meeting with Mr. Davies, we knew that it had to be a special firework for a tight window to fire in. We use the utmost safety when we do anything. See the firing circle? That's now, if you notice, the gas will be even further away, but we allow ourselves even more space just in case of catastrophic failure, which is even if something goes completely wrong, nothing will get close to anyone. But again, these fireworks, as in size, as in range, are merely toys compared to what you guys have seen on television and what you've seen before. So don't let a preconceived notion of what fireworks, what you've seen to what these are. These are totally different. So when it comes down to this, if I didn't think we could do this professionally, I wouldn't be here. Because it's a long drive in the country. Love you all, but this is a very long drive. And Kim and Andrew have been excellent with this, but I just want you guys to know, I want to dispel any rumors before people have preconceived notions of what these are. These are completely safe. To be honest, close proximity fireworks can be fired within the proximity of 15 feet away. The reason why I know this is because I'm in the firing zone every single time, and I'm still here. My wife hates it, but I am still here for it. But we use absolute protection with everything. Plus, that's a very expensive venue, and I'm pretty sure my insurance company would hate if I set a fire there. And my wife. Thank you for your time, ladies and gentlemen.
Any more citizen comments? Seeing none, I will close the hearing. Does the applicant wish to address anything that was stated?
Thank you all. Just to be really quick, Dr. Whipple, your question about the number of events per year. We had actually asked 5 years ago for 1 per day, which falls in line with the rest of the venues in Goochland, if I'm not mistaken, but certainly y'all could pull up the chart if that's a question. The staff at that time recommended that the board approve only 40 events per year till we proved that we could do this without citizens being upset about the noise. And just to, kind of bookend that, we certainly can't continue to pay a mortgage and all the operating costs like we have based on 40 events per year. We 50 events is probably right where we would be comfortable, potentially as much as 60. While it's just the two of us working every single event, 6 a.m. to about 2 a.m. each night when we're done cleaning up. And then I do the tours all day, Sunday afternoon after church every week. So we don't have any long-term plans to ratchet up, but we don't want to go before the renewal again in 5 or 6 years just to ask for 10 more. So I think that was, any other questions?
No, thank you very much. Board members, thoughts and discussion?
You know, as it was said before, this property, this facility is a gem in our community, among others, and we're fortunate to have them, among others. These people have operated this for 5 years responsibly. I think they have demonstrated the ability to conform with all the requirements and so forth. There have been no complaints that I'm aware of from any of the neighbors or anyone. And I think they've approached the fireworks with a sense of responsibility as well, hiring a professional, making sure they've reviewed everything with the fire marshal and so forth. You know, fireworks are part of our American heritage. I mean, you know, we celebrate, and we celebrate with fireworks. And so I'm in favor of approving this. I think with the restrictions or the limitations that we placed on this, I mean, they have to get a permit from a fire marshal each time. They have to conform with all these requirements. You know, and I sat here and I computed it. We're limiting it to 15 times a year for 5-minute durations. That's 75 minutes a year of fireworks spread over 15 events. Now, I would say, and by the way, I can hear the train whistle from my house, and to me, it's a pleasant sound. And I hear others remark about that as well. But, you know, it seems to me we can endure something like that for 5 minutes, regardless of how we look upon it. And certainly we would want to allow them the ability to be successful. I want this entity to thrive in our county. It's good economic development. So.
Thank you. Any other board comments? Okay.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion. I move the board grant conditional use permit CU 2024-0001 for a public assembly place at 2421 River Road West, subject to the imposed conditions with the following amendment. Remove the sentence in condition 16 and replace with the following. A maximum of 15 events with fireworks shall be allowed annually. The firework display shall not last longer than 5 minutes, with the show ending prior to 10 p.m. A minimum of 2 weeks prior to an event with fireworks, the applicant shall provide notice of the event to adjacent property owners. The applicant must obtain a fireworks permit from the Goochland County Fire Marshal. The show must be performed by a professional pyrotechnician, and the shells shall be no larger than 1.62 inches. Alternative overflow parking during the events with fireworks must be shown on the plan of development.
Second.
Any further discussion? Mr. Chair.
So this is an interesting one for me because I think this is one of those rare cases where the system works. You know, we're probably gonna hear some stuff about our next case about how things, you know, people think it should go. You know, I sat in the audience as this case was being brought. Actually, a couple times I had to sit in the audience because it was a very, it was a hot topic. It was new. It was something that people weren't sure how it was gonna go. So we have a process where we put conditions on and we've set timeframes to see how things are going. If you would have told me, I hope so, but if you would have told me 4.5 years ago that there wouldn't be anybody really coming up here in opposition in 5 years with the addition of these more things, I tell you that we did it right and that the applicants did it right. So I appreciate that. I'm glad to see the increase in the number of guests. I think the more folks we have coming, and we've proven this is a safe venue. We've proven that we can manage, you know, it was traffic. There's gonna be lines down River Road we're not gonna get home till, 3 o'clock in the morning. But that's not what we're seeing, so I appreciate that. And again, while I would love, I do, but I also think that we have an obligation to continue that, make sure that we are, that this board is looking out for folks. So keeping it at the 10 years, I think is the right thing to do. But for that, I appreciate them coming forward.
No, seeing no additional discussion or comments, Mr. Carpenter, roll call vote.
Mr. Winfrey?
Aye?
Mr. Spoonhour?
Yes.
Mr. Lyle?
Yes.
Mr. Christie?
Yes.
Mr. Vaughter?
Yes. Our last item tonight is an amendment to zoning ordinance County Code, Chapter 15, and amendments to subdivision, County Code Appendix B to improve access management and road standards. We'll hear from Mr. Ray Cash.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. For the record, my name is Ray Cash, Assistant Director of Community Development, and I feel like I live about 150 feet that way often. Let's see. This ordinance amendment tonight is an ordinance that we brought before you and then ended up getting deferred back in December. We'll go through that and some of the changes as we move forward. So the request, as we said, was an ordinance amendment to both our zoning and our subdivision chapters. As we started out in this, it was really to address the provisions of access management and road design, things that have come up over the past couple of years involving public safety, making sure that we had proper road design to accommodate developments that we're seeing in the county. We also want consistency between our planned roads and our ordinances. There was a big discrepancy between what we planned and what the ordinance called for. We also want to protect the improvements from future road inspection and expansion. We want people to make their investment and confident we're not going to place a road right directly on them in the future. And as we talked about, promote better safety and traffic flow in our neighborhoods. So starting off, we wanted to promote consistency with our major thoroughfare plan. The ordinance and the major thoroughfare plan had different classifications. There was an additional classification that wasn't even close to what was in the major thoroughfare plan. So we wanted to make sure those are in line so we can make proper decisions as we go through the zoning and dedication processes that are involved in development. Access management standards, we've proposed to change to match VDOT standards with some limited exceptions. As Austin would often say, and as we also look at professionals, they are ultimately the people that are maintaining these roads, specifically our secondary and large arterial roads. We wanted to look at, we had greater spacing and other types of lane design. If there's a reason, then we could address that. We also recognize that we should be consistent. People should understand what to expect when they come to Goochland on the standards. Currently, we're proposing that we would keep the current right turn requirements simply for most types of developments, including major subdivisions, and potentially modify the left provisions, and we'll talk about exact provisions as we go forward. We want to update our commercial drive standards to be consistent with fire code because currently we're inconsistent between those. And then update our TIA process, our traffic impact analysis, with some minor changes to really match our practice and what we see in the industry. We also are exploring what we're looking at as the ultimate right-of-way determination. And what does that mean? We have in our major thoroughfare plan, we have in road designs, we have in VDOT requirements for road designs, and for dedications that come about through zoning and other development. That's where you really establish what is the ultimate right-of-way of what the road should ultimately be through the thoroughfare plan. What we're looking at is people should take setbacks or consideration from those ultimate right-of-ways, that protects their investment in their property for the future. It also prevents conflicts that may occur when you start getting those uses too close to that ultimate right-of-way. You also end up with sight lines and the like. The other is that we've proposed something that has come forward often before this board. Typically, anytime we've seen a residential development up adjacent to an arterial or collector road, the previous board, and I expect this board would have similar expectations, is we'd like to have a tree line buffer along those roads. Typically, what we've seen along the high volume roads is 100 feet. Staff is proposing 100 feet along our arterial roads and allowed to go down 50 feet along our collector roads. Of course, this is established as we go forward currently through the zoning process. This will be something that'll be a standard condition or a standard requirement. Any type of residential development comes through. The board could, of course, consider exceptions during different circumstances. What we're also proposing is that all roads become public. Roads and minor subdivisions that serve no more than 4 lots, those may by right stay private. We've also included a provision for sand leaf subdivisions of no more than 6. We'd also look at for roads in townhouse, multifamily, or mixed-use development that they could be private where they don't provide for general circulation. And what we mean by that is that's often cul-de-sacs, connection roads to alleys, and the like. We prefer the heavier traffic or higher volume roads and provide general circulation. These often require additional maintenance. It's hard for some type of these developments to really maintain over time. Propose that they be public. However, for any of these exceptions here, the board could grant an exception through the zoning process. For instance, as we're going through an MPUD or an RPUD, we could always look and say, well, in this circumstance, these certain roads could be or should be private. We'd expect private roads, just like the public roads, to be built to the VDOT standards in the Fire Prevention Code. We've also put forward some specific Goochland standards. And the reason that we're really looking at that is because we recognize that there's a certain expectation for roads and public safety here. And unlike majority of our localities around us and been in the game for a while, not everybody has Appendix D adopted. And we've learned, and I know this board has spoken to us about it, you hear from the citizens about parking signs. No fire lane signs and no parking signs. People in a suburb have the expectation they can park on the street. It's just the way things are. People often, especially downsizing, their garage becomes for other things other than cars, so they need additional places, and people love to visit. And so where are those people that visit park? So we've proposed subdivision designs that would mitigate the need for fire signs. Private road subdivisions can still have the 2 lot shared drive, as they always traditionally. We've updated the standards in the subdivision ordinance for 3 to 4 lots. That previously, 6 inches gravel, stone. Currently it was 16 feet. We've updated to 20 feet, or as what's required by fire code, but also that needs to be capable of supporting public safety. We recognize that may be some expense in some of the initial outlay, but we want to make sure that people can safely navigate to their homes, and importantly, our emergency crews can get there safely to them. So it's a slightly additional ask. And they also hold up over time. The more you have, if you have narrower roads, you end up with rutting and all sorts of things. Subdivision alleys, we currently discourage under our subdivision ordinance. And again, that's an outdated concept. You will see most things that happen in a lot of townhouse development, smaller lot subdivisions. Alleys have become more of a standard type of use, allows for some different design options, some improved design options as well. And we have standards in place that we're expecting that these alleys would be of a higher design, better support than more simplistic. They used to be more like somebody paved your driveway to your house. As we talk about subdivision roads, 5 more lots, unless it goes through the exception process here before the board, would need to be public roads. We've called for curb and gutter for an average lot frontage of less than 100 feet. So what's that translate to? Some of our R1 developments that have public water and sewer, you'll have a lot less than 100 feet. Most often, we're talking about the higher density type of single-family developments of the RPUD. We've also encouraged what we see as a no-lot frontage or a spine road where there's more than 200 units or where the cumulative traffic volume exceeds 2,000 vehicles per day. You know, Goochland doesn't have a lot of those type of developments, but we also recognize there's opportunity of connectivity between those units and the opportunity that we start to develop better roads and better connectivity or options for roads. It takes a lot of pressure off of your major collectors or your arterials, and people have to go one place, they need to get back up on the major road and go other. But also, this is a safer type of environment. We recognize we have a large neighborhood in our West Creek area. That road has a lot of units facing upon it. What that's done, the road's pretty narrow. You have a lot of traffic conflicts. Originally, you know, this was a concept that probably could have provided better traffic flow, better traffic access. This also encourages, instead of having people fronting on the spine road, you more often use with a continuous in a cul-de-sac type of environment for the lots, which also a lot of developers or purchasers, they'd rather be on the cul-de-sac than what would be considered a heavy traffic road. Road design, as I mentioned, we develop new design standards here. What that results in for roads is a 56 versus 50-foot right-of-way. It's not really a lot for that, for what we gain, not having the need for fire lines. It allows for on-street parking, and also it's not that the fire marshal's got to continually either service tickets, go visit out there, or we have to be constantly looking for exceptions through the fire chief and fire marshal. We've put those figures and designs inside the zoning ordinance. A lot of localities don't, they just default to VDOT. We felt it was important that we should have standards in our ordinance people would understand, and we could do that. Something also we can work with them to make sure we have that right. Different designs have different abilities. For instance, the chart that's in the lower right here, and you know, the different thicknesses, the different aggregate and stuff, that's based upon traffic volume, just like it would be if VDOT was involved in this. So your cul-de-sacs, you know, you're looking at about a lesser design than you would be on some of the major streets. We've also been promoting, especially in RPD, more of a throated intersection type environment. You also see that a lot of the new development that's out there promotes safety and more pedestrian-friendly design. And we also have different types of roads for different types of circumstances. So where have we been? So in the Planning Commission back in November, it was approved with a 5-0 vote. At the time, there was still some concern from the development community, and, you know, that they wanted a little bit more time to consider, but they confident in staff and conveyed that to the commission that they were okay and would not object to it moving forward. Staff did meet with the HBAR representatives and others. We discussed some proposals, changed the request. I will say a lot of it was really getting down to is clarifying really what we already had and what we're proposing to gain some understanding. I will say it was really resulting with some minor changes to the ordinance that went forward for there. And it's my understanding, based upon the proposal that we had, we've received an email that was sent to the Board of Support. So changes that have happened since the Planning Commission, they are in your packet. We added an inclusion for a fire code exception to the remoteness standard. That's already in the fire code. We also felt that was a little important to add inside the zoning ordinance as well, because that would be part of the process that goes forward. We've also revised the buffers, as we already talked about. We updated the PTIA requirements. I would say one of the important things is that we have an option for evaluation at time of plan and development review based upon the data. Currently, it's always at the zoning process. We updated, did some tweaks to the figures based upon some comments received, and then changed the standard from 3 to 4 lots and then extended it to for private roads for subdivisions of 6. So since the board public hearing in December, we had another meeting with them and resulted in just one or two more changes we'll quickly go through. We added the term mixed-use development for roads where private roads can be utilized, and again, that's the ones that don't provide general circulation. We've also have a proposal that developments that exit onto And staff, as you read things 100 times, you see words that you didn't see before or words you thought were there that aren't. If you notice in number 1, it says all entrances onto major and minor arterial and collector roads must provide right turn lanes. Now previously it said must provide right and left turn lanes. What we have done here is switched that developments that exit onto, it should say major and minor arterial, we're missing some words, and collectors roads, and that have 20 or more lots must provide a left turn lane at each entrance. If they're less than 20 lots, they would still have to install them if warranted by VDOT. So if you think about it over a major travel or a heavier traveled road, or different types of circumstances, the 20 lots would not apply if the VDOT was already going to warrant that, or the less than 20 could still be required to do that. That's also something that would be discussed during the zoning case of considerations for that. The other is the traffic impact analysis. What we did is just separate the provisions of major residential subdivisions with 20 or more lots is when you need the TIA, and then make sure that commercial and industrial developments would be required to have a TIA as part of their processes. Subdivision ordinance, there was a lot of concern came from the development community that it seemed as the way it was written before, it gave the implication that we were requiring sidewalks on both sides of the street in every circumstance. That's not what the intent was. I don't think that's the intent of what the board had for this. And so what we do is provide that it should be on one side where appropriate, or it would be, that's something we discuss at time of zoning. And the sidewalks would be required, as installed as required by the zoning ordinance or conditions of zoning. And that's all something we work out. This also had provision about where curb and gutter would be required, which again is less than 100 feet of the road frontage. We have clarified before, there was a big concern about that we had used the term suitable. And what this talks about is when developments contain more than 40 lots, they have to provide that 2 separate permanent access points for entrance and exit onto existing public roads. So that's what we've all talked about that before in other cases you've seen, is that's important from fire code perspective and really the standards of here in VDOT, that you really expect that there's a second access provided. We use the term suitable because we would not want that second access to be a public road or a private road that is not up to standards and couldn't handle that additional volume, or the pavement's in such bad shape we can't do that type of thing. And if you think about a case we had a few years ago, we had Whippoorwill Road that was being expanded. They wanted to use as access. We worked with the developer to make sure that road became suitable by improving the pavement and the driveways to be, so it wouldn't be such a burden on the existing neighborhood. That was the intent of the word. We went ahead and expanded upon that suitable term to give a little more comfort level to the development community as to what is meant by that, and that's listed there. Staff, of course, is available for any questions and be glad to talk it through. And I would note that staff would request that, and I need to work with you, just make sure the major or minor gets added to that condition should it be staying for turn lanes.
That means even if the board members don't choose to make any amendments or anything, the approval motion would still be as amended, because staff is telling you there are 2 words missing from the section, and I have them written down and can refer back to those, so.
Any questions for Mr. Kemp?
Oh, Mr. Chairman, if we've got, I mean, when will these amendments or these changes become effective? Now, I'm thinking of an applicant that has already brought forth in the process, and he's had engineering done and all this, that, and the other. Does this send him back to the drawing board, or is he grandfathered? You know, exactly, is this for new applicants hence from now on, or is it retro? It seems to me it makes some sense to let the grandfathered people who applied under before it was changed.
So when you have changes like this, and it's just like we make any other type of zoning change, you follow with the standards at the time of your of when you're making the actual development application, your subdivision application, your plan of development. And that often happens. You always have stormwater regs that change over time. You have things that evolve. You can have zoning that's basically been sitting out there for, 8, 10, 12, 15 years. I've seen in my past more than that. So the expectation is there are new road designs in place. So at the time of development, there would be they would meet the current standards. That would be the same if setbacks had changed over time and the zoning. So unless there's something specific in the approved zoning case, they would meet the new conditions.
Yeah, under state law, a zoning ordinance, once it's changed, applies unless the applicant has already gotten a significant affirmative government approval, which would include already have an approved plan of development. That would mean they don't have to change. But if all they've done right now is apply, the law would say they have to comport with the new requirements. That's just how the courts handle it, that's how the law handles it for zoning ordinances, changes.
But I noticed in here, we do have the ability to waive something if it's justifiable or makes good sense.
So, yeah, through the zoning process, if someone would come back forward before you and ask for an exception, at this point is really the turn lane issue is one that we would expect to be common. Public or private maintenance would be something that's common. I think we'd most often see in the RPDs and MPDs sort of asking for flexibility with different road designs. My expectation is that would be pretty common.
Mr. Cash, going back to the turning lanes, I've had some brief interaction with staff, and my understanding is turning lanes invariably improve safety. And so I'm not sure I'm comfortable with us removing the turning lane requirements, given that we retain the ability to waive them in circumstances where it would make sense to do that.
Right.
My understanding, and I have had conversations with H-Bar as recently as today, that there is an economic impact of the turn lane, but I'm hard-pressed to put the economic impact above safety. And so given that we would have the waiver ability, is it possible that we can retain what we currently have and waive when sensible and keep things as they are?
That's correct. The current, as you mentioned, the current ordinance does have that provision that they could request exception or waive the requirement for a turn lane at the time of zoning action. So recognize that if they do or do not, if they don't want to do it, there's always they need to come back before the body is the current proposal. I will say this was something that was a request of the development community. It was a much larger request at the beginning. It's come down. In letting that expectation, staff did do a modification that potentially, should the board wish to, we could sort of reimpose where we were currently, which would be the exception that it's always for a major subdivision that would be a development 5 lots or more would need to come and would have to be required to have a turn lane. We also recognize that others had the concern. We also prepared an option that it could be 10 instead of the 20. So it sort of cuts down the number. I know that Austin had done some sort of our self-imposed benchmarking of what we've done here in the past, and there has been opportunities where the board has granted that waiver for that. And that also weighed a little bit into what staff's presentation or proposal was based upon a balance between what the development community was asking for and what we've seen here before. But again, staff, will the board, and we want to make sure that there's options available for you to consider.
Mr. Chair, if I can follow up on that real quick. So I think we need to be careful because you hit on something in a zoning case, they would come before us for a waiver, but we have to think broader than that of by right, we are changing by right requirements by doing this and saying that we want to be more restrictive than the professionals in VDOT that do this.
Right.
So what is the process then if I've got land it's not a zoning case, who do I go to get that waiver? Because it's now I might have to come in for the whole board.
Right, so let's say you did have the by right scenario, and you want to do, let's say we were at the 20, or whatever, the person comes in and wants to do 25 lots. Let's say, I'm sorry, let's make sure it's under the number. They want to do 10, 15 lots, whatever they're looking for. I'm sorry, somebody else is whispering. But anyway, let's say that under the current provisions that we have in the ordinance, that exception process is only available through the zoning process. So if we shift to a scenario that it's more of the by right scenario, someone would have to actually make a zoning application specifically to ask, you're asking for the waiver from the board.
In fact, the statement could be, I've owned my land, I've planned to develop it, we've changed something, now I have to come for the board when I didn't before.
Well, I think that they would be required to come before the board currently if they tried to do turn lane and they're having a major subdivision of 5 lots or more to get that waiver. What we're proposing now is, right. So what this proposal was is without the 20, they wouldn't have to come back to the board. But again, it's awkward when you have a situation that you have to open up another process to get an exception to one. But that is, with road design, it's not really something that was administrative type of review.
Well, yeah, I think I appreciate Mr. Spoonhour's comments because I'm easily confused on occasion. But the current status quo, if we kept that turn lane requirement, that is not changing anything. It's keeping what we currently have.
Right, which would be for a major subdivision, which we're defining as 5 lots or more,
Okay.
would be required to have a turn lane.
Yeah, I'm not interested in imposing new restrictions per se, but I am interested in retaining the safety standards that seem to have been working okay with the ability to grant exceptions.
Right.
And so, I'm coming back to road safety, and I'm thinking of in 5th District roads, we've got a lot of curves. I call them cow paths.
A lot of straight roads out there, right?
Yes, sir. So, I'm appreciative that we have the ability to grant waivers, which this previous board, the 2023 board did. But there are also instances, I believe, the 2023 board did not grant waivers because they felt that the safety situation warranted keeping the turn lane requirement.
Right.
Okay. All right. I just want to make sure we're not imposing new restrictions. We're keeping what we have.
This one sort of keeps it in place. It's more of a rearrangement of the language, puts you back in the same place.
Okay, thank you.
This is a more general question of planning, but you said these terms a lot throughout your presentation. Updates, consistency, standards. That is the feeling of planning, that this allows us to be more standardized, more in line with, the back and forth that we inevitably have with the development community, instead of all over the board, potentially.
Right. Yeah, I would say through this, the development community and talking with them, they did recognize that we were putting a bigger ask upon them as far as design standards and the like, but we received good feedback. Working with us on design, they understood what Goochland's goal was. We've been notifying developers for the past year that are coming through zoning lag applications, hey, we're looking for something better here for that. And, not sure what they feel about the last change, but they had been supportive before on the proposal.
Thank you. Any other questions at this time? Okay. I will now open the public hearing. Same rules relating to time and seating time apply.
Good evening, Board. My name is Mark Heil, and I live on Robinson Road in Sandy Hook area. And in general, I'm in favor of this amendment or updating the rules and for the roads. And And I basically just want to tell you, if it had been in place before, because of where we built a home, it would have helped, because Rockets Ridge now came in because it was approved like 2006 or 7, and now they have a second entrance onto a road that is not really designed and built for that kind of traffic. And so that's why I'm giving that as an example of where this would have been helpful to have in place. And also having the private gravel roads or private subdivision, and a standard for that would help on the gravel road that I live on. And so I'm just another example of where I think that this is applicable in keeping updated for future development. Thank you.
Linda Moore, 2164 Prophet Road, Mannequin Sabbath. I think we keep on missing the one thing that I am not comfortable with, and that is the left turn lane. And I'm going to go back to when we were deciding Tuckahoe Bridge on the Mannequin Road side. It was prior to the zoning ordinance amendments, update. So it was approved with that. And they kept on saying that VDOT says we don't have to do a right turn lane on Mannequin Road. I can tell you right now, they agreed to put a right turn lane as part of their proffers for it, and it's a much safer road. Mannequin Road is just, it's just unbelievable that you would say, well, because it has, say the property right next to it does develop, 123 acres are now up for grabs because it's for sale right now. If they go through the rezoning process, they could possibly have 21, 22 homes on that road. And if they're not required to put, if they keep it under 20, they're not going to have a right turn lane. That's, or a left turn lane. I'm sorry, I'm mixed up. It's late. But please try to understand that for the developers, it's a little bit of an expense, I imagine. But for us, we're going to be living there, and we need to be safe to get to have that. And we are watering down every time we turn around. They're doing these countywide zoning ordinance amendments that affects the whole county. And I just don't see it. Please, just change the left turn lane for safety reasons. Thank you.
Good evening, Eddie Good. I live at 1307 Old Logan Road, Mannequin Sabbath. I'm not speaking for or against the ordinance. What I am speaking is for grandfathering. We've spent the better part of a year developing a neighborhood. It passed the Board of Supervisors last year 4-1. We have submitted our plan of development, and for the ordinances to be affecting our neighborhood right now would not just lead to expense. As a taxpayer, it would lead to county inefficiency from staff for having to re-review, re-comment on a development that has already been submitted, that has been taken in their comments and submitted. Also, the new ordinances would lead to severe and larger impervious surfaces in our proposed neighborhood. One of the key complaints from the adjoining neighborhood was that there was a pond, and we agreed. And as part of any ordinance, new or old, we have to retain stormwater. We're in the plan provided, we are trying to exceed state stormwater requirements. By adding impervious surfaces, we will be impacting our neighbors to our lower end more, for no reason. And since we have submitted this plan, we have put forth our engineering and our development, I would ask for some type of grandfathering. Thank you.
Any additional citizens? If not, I will close the hearing. Does staff wish to address any of the comments they heard?
I don't like to, come back and forth. I appreciate hearing people's comments. The intent of this is actually not to really degrade as much as we can. Actually, we're asking for some improvements to the standards that really comes down to the bottom line, improves public safety, also provides opportunities for less maintenance and impacts on taxpayers. We do recognize the concerns regarding the left turn lane. I know that that's an area of concern for several people. I think Ms. McGee did address that's the way ordinances that go forward. I don't know if you want me to address the specifically the last circumstance or comments that were made for that, but I will say, that's part of the zoning process. If you need an exception for something, you come back and ask for it. And sometimes they benefit a development, sometimes they harm a development from people's perspective, but ultimately you're trying to meet the goals to meet public safety, health, safety, and welfare, and making sure that Goochland meets, there's a standard in Goochland that is expected, and a standard development here that is cost-effective, long-term for the county and taxpayers as well. If you have a specific question for me.
Yeah, so Mr. Gass, regarding Mr. Good's concern specifically, with those projects that are already up the plan of development, we're changing the game. How do we manage that?
So at this point, I would say that application is not at plan of development. That is a provision. What we look at is where you are in the process has always been sort of a practice for a locality. If they're at their third or fourth review, that's a significant type of investment. We all know that it's at its standard. We start looking at it as like, it's not fair to back up in system and those type of things. That is something that you commonly do in customer service and process to do that. What you look at is, if you've reached a certain stage, and that goes to sort of you've done a significant type of investment and those type of things, what you try to do is, the code says it's a new standard, new ordinance and things like that. I would say, I don't know what y'all would say to me if somebody's right at the last stage of design and I'm trying to, they're ready to record and final plat and you're having this hearing today. That's a little bit different story that I think the expectations would be going forward. If you're generally in the starting or beginning of your process and this is what the ordinance says, or if you're at a different types of things, pay attention, try to get those things done under our ordinance to try to get those there. Staff works with people. I would say my experience in the past, you try to make sure things are done. You also try to make sure people are aware of the processes that are changing when you're going through the zoning process to make people alert of that.
So, Ray,
So I don't know what to say.
I guess, would Mr. Good have to start over again?
He would, because it's my understanding they cannot meet the turn lane exception for their property. We can't review plans that don't meet the zoning standards of the zoning case.
Can we grandfather him?
No.
I have a different answer to that. The law, my answer earlier is about how the law applies its zoning ordinance change. Should it be the board's desire to grandfather this for applications for plan of development that have already been filed, then you would do that in the effective provision of the ordinance. So in other words, today, it says in front of you, this ordinance is effective immediately. But you have the authority to say that the ordinance is effective immediately, except that for properties for which a plan of development have been filed with the county prior to March 4th, 2024, and not yet approved, those can be grandfathered from these amendments. I mean, you can draw that line in the sand to have it not apply for existing plan of development applications.
Right. Yeah, and that's, I meant, yeah, that's what I was trying to get, you would have to do a date. It wasn't something you could say prior to.
Tara, could we set an effective date? Like, say, I don't know, July
Yes,
1st or?
You could, and what you would want to make clear that if you say this ordinance instead, if you just said is effective July 1st, 2024, the understanding would be, if that's all that's said, is that you better be approved before July 1st, 2024, okay? That's why I did mine with a filing date, because the law would say if you're not approved, even if it's the day before you'd get approved, the law, that, thing out here that exists, would say go back to the starting gate. If you wanted to make sure it applied with respect to filing, and you don't have to use March 4th. You could say it's effective for applications filed, after July 1 type of thing. So yes, you have you have authority to make some of those changes.
I'll go back to my original comment. It seems to me that, like hitting a light switch, it's immediate, it would make some sense to have a phasing in of some sort of a acclimation period to allow people to adjust to it and so forth,
Right.
particularly those who are in process.
Right. I would say that, as we mentioned, you would try to do that administratively as comfortably as we could, or different stages. I don't, should the board wish to, what Ms. McGee says is sort of address the people that are already in the process that we've already been reviewing, and things, that sort of helps us keep what we're moving. Our intent is not really to stop people that are already in that stage of the process. It also sort of gives me a better comfort level to say, well, we don't have to start re-reviewing all these plans from scratch for the plan of development. So that's something that, staff, I don't have any objection to. I think it does help clear up that confusion.
I'll make a motion if you're ready. And I'm going to need Ms. McGee's help on this because she came up with language.
I'm here to help.
And I appreciate that, Counselor. Mr. Chair, I move that the board approve zoning ordinance amendment ZOA 2023-00003 relating to access management and road standards with this amendment. 15-353 is amended as follows. B1, add the words left and before right turn lanes. B2, remove this subparagraph entirely. And B3 and 4, renumber these subparagraphs to reflect the removal of subparagraphs 2. And the wording that Ms.
The wording I mentioned earlier is in subparagraph 2. So since you just removed it, you don't need to add that.
Well, I told you I would need her help. So now I would like to add the exemption for filings that have occurred before today.
Okay, and that language would be that the ordinance is effective immediately, except that properties for which a plan of development has been filed with the county prior to March 4th, 2024, and not yet approved, are hereby grandfathered from these amendments.
Is
what I came
plan
up
of
with.
development the right time? Is there another stage, is it application?
I would,
It is an application for the plan of development, but
Ms. McGee?
staff, if you have a different answer, you're more in the process.
no, I think plan development would be appropriate, because that's when we actually start seeing the road designs and those type of things. For final plat's a little too late in the game because we're reviewing things for that. The only other sort of checkpoint that we have would be for a large subdivision when you have a tentative plat. But I think,
And as you know, tentative plat approval provides its own significant affirmative government
Correct.
act, which means this would
it's
not.
already sort of established through that tentative
Correct.
plat process.
So question then.
I don't have any of those pending.
All right, so when Mr. Good was up here, would he now be covered by this because he's already been granted a waiver by the board? Is he covered or not?
There's no waiver granted for left turn lanes for the case for which he's referring.
Has he filed his application for plan of development?
No.
Ms. McGee, if I may, you added a word there that plan of developments filed before today would not be subject to this amendment. I'm highly interested in making sure that the left-hand turn lane amendment applies.
That does, that does not, is not encompassed within what the language I wrote, because, so you're correct.
sorry,
Because I was doing two different times.
So,
I'm sorry, let me listen to Ms. McGee, please.
You're correct. You captured that because I was working on two different thoughts of amendments, that the language with respect to exempting plans of development that have been filed, as I stated it, would exempt the left-hand turn lane rule. Well, no, sir. It would go back to today's language in the left-hand turn,
Right.
which means today you have to build it unless you got that waiver at zoning.
correct.
So because today's ordinance already contains a requirement for right and left turn lanes, when you exempt them from the changes, it goes back to what exists today. So left-hand turn lanes for all major subdivisions would be required.
I think I understand what I was told, and I appreciate the clarification.
Certainly.
Mr. Chairman, I'll go back to Ms. McGee's comment. Is there a sense of urgency to do this immediately? I mean, could we reasonably consider this taking effect July 1st, 2024?
I would say this is something that staff and work with and the development community and public safety was really intended to address some specific problems. My concern would be, I guess professionally, is that you get a rush of applications or types of things purposely to avoid things that have been considered, at least by the previous board and the fire safety and staff as well, as important to go forward to development. Again, I don't disagree with the provision of sort of people catch where we are now. For that, I guess the concern is I don't want to sort of leave us vulnerable that we're getting less than what our expectations would be under this new proposal. A lot of things could come forward, a lot of
Mr.
roads.
Chair, can I try to steer us a little procedurally? We have an amendment out, we have a motion on the table that I don't believe has been seconded. So if we don't receive a second, that motion dies and you would, I imagine, entertain another motion. Mr. Chair, while I appreciate the amount of effort staff has put into this, I am loath to change the game midstream on folks without confidence that we're not changing the game midstream on folks. So I would move that we defer this to a date that we can determine in order to understand what are the current implications for those applications in process. And to Mr. Catch, there's a pragmatic way. If people start rushing to get this in, then I'm concerned it's not the right thing to do in the first place. So if people say, we need to get this in because it's not the right thing, then I'm not sure that that data point would be of interest to me.
Okay.
So my motion is to defer this to what would be a good time till our April.
Yeah, we'd be at
April 16th.
we'd be at the first hearing. Right.
Or we could go to May. So move to, defer to the May Board of Supervisors meeting?
I'll second that.
Thank you.
Any additional discussion? Board?
I have a question. How many cases do we have in the pipeline that'll be affected by this if we don't
Well,
grandfather them?
again, what it comes down to is, we only have a few, I guess, zoning cases that have been approved in recent years for residential. Most of those have already, they usually come back pretty quick for those. There are what you would think is the by right or some of the older approved subdivisions. Think that, for example, like a Rockets Ridge, there's a couple of those older neighborhoods out there that have kind of never developed. So that's kind of what's out there. And, and again, staff is just trying to address what we've heard from our direction from the Board for Public Safety and stuff. It's not to penalize or anybody or hurt anybody, and appreciate that we don't want to, and I'm sorry I phrased it that way, that it seems like we're trying to close the door on people, and that's not really what our intent is to do. And so we want to make sure it's flexible and fair for people, and if there's other things in this that you'd like staff to develop through this, please share that with us so we can come back with something acceptable.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for defer, and this is for deferral to May, just to clarify. Seeing no additional discussion from the board, roll call vote, please.
Mr. Spoonhour?
Yes.
Mr. Lyle?
Yes.
Mr. Christie?
Yes.
Mr. Winfrey?
Yes.
Mr. Waters?
Yes. With that, we'll be moving to adjourn until a Monday, March 18th work session at 9 a.m. between the Board of Supervisors and School Board, followed by a Board of Supervisors work session on the CIP at 12 noon. Our next regular meeting of the board will be Tuesday, April 6th, at a time to be determined. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.